Hello everyone, this is the Iron Marshal speaking, and today I will be presenting you with my own little analysis about the impact of railways on the world. Now, I realize that this video may represent a little bit of a departure from my usual more politics-oriented content. However, I do want to diversify this channel to better represent various different topics that I'm interested in. And as it happens, railways are one of my oldest and strongest passions. Now, to get started, we need to analyze how the railways came to be. How did they emerge? What purpose did they serve? And how did they ultimately evolve into the transportation systems that we all know today? Now, the history of the railways can actually be traced back many hundreds of years, back to the old tramways, mining railways that were used to transport basic goods like iron ore, coal, and so on across short distances. Now, these mining railways were very basic affairs. Simple wagons hauled on wooden rails by horses without any kind of complex signaling systems or anything like that. As I say, basic. Now, as time moved on and technology improved, so did the tramways. And another thing that increased was demand. And as demand grew, it was soon found that horses did not suffice in order to transport these increasingly heavy loads across the necessary distances. Now, with the advent of the steam engine from engineers like James Watt, soon enough mankind came upon what I like to consider to be one of their greatest technological achievements: the locomotive. Now, with the advent of the locomotive, this opened up a whole new world. The locomotive was, even in its earliest, most crude form, significantly more powerful and faster than even the strongest horses. With the advent of the locomotive, it also meant that the tramways could evolve beyond their basic purpose of transporting iron ore or coal. Now they could transport passengers and all kinds of different goods between different towns, different cities, whole countries, and even continents. And so you saw the spread of the railways. The first proper railway was the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opened in 1830. And soon after that, you saw the development of railways in different parts of the world, places like Belgium, France, Italy, Germany, Russia, and, most significantly, the United States. Now, it's difficult to find any country that benefited more from the introduction of the railways than the United States. Now, the US is a vast, vast country. And to effectively traverse those distances, you need an effective form of transportation. And trains just so happen to fit this job description perfectly. And you can gauge how well America took to railways partially by looking at the overall size of its railway network. For example, in 1914, just around the time World War I broke out, it's estimated that there were around 1.2 million kilometers of railway tracks laid up all across the world. The United States accounted for 250,000 kilometers of that total mileage. By contrast, a country like Russia, which was significantly larger, both in terms of landmass and population, had only 46,000 kilometers. Take that in for a second. It's difficult to properly emphasize the impact that the railways had. Their ability to transport massive amounts of people and goods across vast distances essentially supercharged the Industrial Revolution, which was already underway by the time the locomotive rolled around. Now, another thing that should be added is the vast social, political, and military applications of the railways, and one should consider the impact that it had. With the ability to traverse vast distances, the railways inevitably came under the eye of the military, which understood that the ability to transport vast quantities of men and materiel would be very useful in the event of a war. You saw the use of the railways in conflicts such as the Franco-Prussian War, the Boer War, World War I, World War II. In its more blunt form, Military applications of the railways took the form of things like armored trains or railway guns, for instance. However, you saw also a more subtle application of the railways in war. By that, I mean things like troop trains and supply trains. Now, a single train can transport the same amount of goods that it would take hundreds or even thousands of wagons to transport, and it can do so in a significantly shorter amount of time. You can see how this would be useful in the event of armed conflict. So, the railways helped not only to supercharge the Industrial Revolution, but on the other hand, they also made wars significantly more efficient and thus significantly more deadly. Now, as the 19th century came to an end and the 20th century began, you began to see the emergence of a new competitor for transportation, the car. Now, as opposed to the railways, cars are significantly more versatile. Trains are, by comparison, rather cumbersome affairs. You have to arrange all the wagons and carriages, you have to figure out how you're going to direct them, because trains can only travel where the track takes them. Cars and trucks are, by comparison, a fair bit more flexible. So, as the 20th century moved on, and especially after the end of World War II, you began to see an increasing emphasis upon cars. And so the railways began to lose ground. This took the form of the old tram systems, which are essentially a form of railway anyway, being torn up in places like Brisbane or the various American cities, and you also saw things like the Beeching Plan. In the UK, this meant the shutdown of 3,000 stations and about 6,437 kilometers of railway, 1/4 or 25% of the UK's total railway network at the time. Now, make of this what you will, but this gives you an idea of just the kind of situation the railways were in at this time as the car took center stage. However, as the 20th century now came to an end, you began to see an increasing shift back towards the railways. With cities becoming increasingly gridlocked by traffic and concerns over pollution rising, you began to see the re-emergence of the railways. Now, like I said before, a single train can transport hundreds of people or hundreds of tons of goods. A single truck can only transport a tiny fraction of that, and the same theory applies to buses. So you can see why the railways have made something of a comeback in the 21st century. And I think that truly shows how versatile the railways are in their own way. They're useful and they are durable. That's honestly the best thing I can come up with to describe the railways. They have made an enormous impact on the world, and you can just look at the individual projects created by different countries to see the impact that they had. The Transcontinental Railway opened up the United States and connected the West Coast and the East Coast. The Trans-Siberian Railway allowed Russia to better exploit the vast natural resources of Siberia. And don't even get me started on the high-speed rail network of countries like Japan, which have made transportation by train so much more efficient than it used to be. The railway's impact upon the world is difficult to overstate. And so I would say that that would be the best place to leave off. This is the Iron Marshal, signing off. Please like this video and subscribe.